Hello, today I'd like to give you a demonstration of video surveillance software, specifically Milestone software, running on a Qumulo scale across a storage cluster. So one of the first things Qumulo does is that it takes your I/O and stripes it down the nodes and then across the drives. This allows them to give you high performance as well as high uptime across the cluster. Now, of course, more than two drive failures or one node failure may be advantageous depending upon the size of your cluster, and Qumulo allows you to set up that protection at cluster creation time so that if you have more nodes, say 8 or 9 or 10 or 15 or 25 or 100 nodes, you can basically set up the type of protection that you want so that you can have a lot more drive failures and simultaneous node failures. Now, I want to talk to you a little bit about the Qumulo real-time data analytics, where you can actually look at what's occurring on a Qumulo scale across cluster. But before we do that, let's look a little bit at the console on a Windows system running the Milestone XProtect software. Here is the console. I'm not going to go into a lot of details here. It's probably not germane to this demonstration. This would be, say, a typical university environment. Where we see in the top center of the screen a data center running that Milestone management server with a SQL server which stores all the assets of where all the cameras are located and also where all the assets for each of the camera recordings are located, a Qumulo cluster. And then in the top right, I have a recording server with no locally attached disk that happens to sit in the main data center. Below that, I have a recording server in Campus Building 1, and you'll see that I have a little disk drive attached to it with a 1 gig network with some cameras attached to that 1 gig network. In the lower left, I have another recording server in Campus Building 1, same setup, locally attached disk with some cameras. And then in the bottom center of the screen, I have an office, let's call it the Security of Campus Police Office, with a smart wall PC with multiple monitors that are running either live feeds or pre-recorded feeds of the security cameras throughout the campus. So let's see how data moves through the environment. So for the first hour using Campus Building 2, I'll take all the assets off of, or all the recordings, if you will, off of the cameras, and I'll move them directly into the recording server and store them locally. After 1 hour, I'll take all the assets that are older than that and dump them to the Qumulo cluster. In the top right, I have my main data center recording server with some cameras, but you notice there's no disk attached to it. That's because that main data center actually records direct to the Qumulo cluster. There are advantages and disadvantages to both methods of doing this, but both are valid and are allowed within the Milestone software. That's what I really want to show about configuration of the Milestone software. It's not in-depth or detailed. It's just an understanding so you can see how it's writing to the Qumulo scale across cluster. Let's go back to our UI for the Qumulo cluster, and I'm going to start basically at the dashboard. And you're going to see that here I'm looking at a 24-hour period, and you're seeing that I'm actually got about 9,000 IOPS a second, and my writes are about 29 megabytes per second, and my reads are 3.73. Now I'm going to describe why that's occurring a little bit later, but if I go back in time, I'm going to move the cursor over, you'll see that I have this big burst around 1 p.m. where it starts. So this is my 1 hour for two of my recording servers. I'm recording locally in that 1 hour. I move all those assets over to the Qumulo scale across cluster. And this other traffic that's there all the time is that one recording server that's writing from the 50 cameras. Now you can see it's not very high. It's only about 26 to 30 megabytes per second. So with the idea that I can write at about 400 megabits per second from a recording server, you can see even if I multiply that by 8, I have a little ways to go and could put more cameras on that recording server. So there's no time like the present to kind of explain why we have this read that's occurring as well as the writing. Let me go back over to the management console right here that you see for Milestone. And I'm actually going to minimize this because I'm not that concerned about it at this point. We know the writing's occurring locally from this one recording server, and from the other recording servers, once an hour, it's actually dumping it down. And you can see this storage here is actually quite full. In fact, it is completely full. So it doesn't shut off recording. Milestone's very smart. It's now pruning assets to keep it under 24.4 terabytes or 15 days so that it can continue to record every hour. But I want to show you something different. What's causing the reading? I'm going to come down here and I'm actually going to look at Smart Client running 6 cameras that I'm actually pulling off of the simulated camera feeds of the Paris Metro. So as the last part of my demonstration, I said that I was going to show you replication to protect against a disaster in your data center. So I've actually created another cluster here called Baby Groot. I'm showing it to you right here. 95.9 terabytes of usable storage. I'm only using 2.5 terabytes right now. And I'm going to replicate all the data from the Discover cluster here over there. So first off, I'm probably going to look at it and say, well, I'm using 50 terabytes of the Discover cluster, and I've capped my Milestone software to 50 terabytes. Of course, you don't have to, but I've done that in the Milestone console and said how much I wanted to store there. So I'm easily going to fit all those assets on Baby Groot, and I'm just going to show you that now. So I'm going to set up the replication relationship, and at this point, I could actually do 3 different replication relationships, one for each one of the recording servers, or I could make it simple on myself and just say, hey, I'm going to do the entire Milestone share, and in there are 3 recording servers, so they'll all come over. And on the Baby Groot, I say I'm going to call it Milestone-DR, and I need an IP address for Baby Groot. So I just so happen to have that written down. I'm going to put that in there. Now, that's it. That's all you have to do, and save the relationship. And now you can see it's waiting authorization on the target cluster. If we go to Baby Groot, you'll see something appeared right here. Discovered 1 replication relationship authorization request, hit see details, and you'll see I've got a bunch of other replications that are occurring right now. I'm going to authorize this, and it's going to say, do you want to confirm creating the target directory? And I'm going to say, yes, I am. And now it's going to say view all of that on the source. And if I come back to the source, it's replicating. And if I look at the details, you'll see that it's going at about 480 megabytes per second. It's going to ramp up a little bit. It shows you exactly down at the bottom how much it's transferred. It's already got 724 directories, or 7.7 gig. There it just went to 9.9. And this will be done in a day. The nice thing about the Qumulo scale across file system is that when this replication's done, remember, we do no tree walking at all. So this actually will find all of the delta changes, and every couple seconds it'll send the delta changes across for the replication. So there was nothing that you had to do in your relationship where you could actually come across and say, I want to find out how do we schedule this relationship? I want to do replication once an hour, once every 2 hours. Qumulo has made it very simple for you. You just set up the relationship and it continuously does replication. This flag here is set continuous replication enabled, and it will just keep going. Now, if you have the, say, a high performance job that's running at midnight, you could add blackout windows, and you can specify I don't want it to run from one period of time to another. And you can create multiple blackout windows. The first one, of course, is number 1, and then I can add a second one right here and create different times. And I can add multiple blackout windows for every replication relationship. I'm going to cancel that. I'm going to let it keep going. Hopefully that has given you a good view of the Qumulo scale across cluster running video surveillance, in this case Milestone software. Thank you very much.